先ほどジュリーさんのお話で分かりました。まずソークインスチュートをサンディエゴが誘致した。これは今オーイストがもうすぐ改革するっていうのと全く同じタイミングだと思うんですね。で、私たちは次のステップに今進む段階に入ったというふうに考えています。で、それがクラスター形成ということです。どうやって OIST とさまざまなアントレプレナーとか地元の企業たち、あるいは国内外の企業たちでも構いませんけれども、相互作用をして知的な産業クラスターを形成するかということです。で、このためにはぜひ世界で今一番成功している産業クラスターであるシリコンバレーの経験から私たちは学ばなければいけないと思います。まず2番目のセッションの2番目のテーマに入る前にサスさんからシリコンバレーで一体何が起こったのかというご説明をいただきましょう。
So I prepared a small presentation, and I'll describe it. So I came across very interesting statistics recently, and I wanted to share it with you, and then tell you about my experience, the interaction between entrepreneurship and R&D clusters. So here's the statistics. This is venture capital activity, how much money goes to small companies to support small companies, as a percent of GDP. So if you look on the left-hand side, the two large numbers are Israel and the United States. And if you look at the smallest number in the chart, it's Japan on the right-hand side. So I've lived the past 30 years in Silicon Valley and participated in the growth there. I'm originally from Israel, and I do business in Israel. And I worked in the semiconductor equipment industry, so I used to travel to Japan once a month, so I'm reasonably familiar with Japan as well. So the goal that here in Okinawa is to try to move in that direction. And if we want to move in that direction, what does it take to do it? So the first thing, let's try to understand this ecosystem that is needed to support entrepreneurship in an R&D cluster. So this is from my experience. This is a successful entrepreneurship knowledge centers. And it's the combination of a few things. First is an infrastructure, which I'll discuss. Then access to markets. And the third one are entrepreneurs. And all of that is supported by a very strong culture. So if to add details here, in the infrastructure, you need to have very good universities. You need to have money available to start companies, and you need to have experienced investors, not just money. It's not money given by the government. You need good investors who know how to separate between good investment and not so good investment. And as far as access to market, you want to be able to access large markets. You want to be able to collaborate with customers so you don't work in isolation. And then you want merger and acquisition or public market so entrepreneurs can make money. And when you look at entrepreneurs, you want a combination of talents, not just technology. You also want a good marketing, and you want to have people, entrepreneurs who can run companies, small, medium, and bring them to be large companies. And then from culture point of view, as we discussed here, you need a culture of innovation. You need to be able to take risks, and you want a fast pace, I call it driver mentality, maybe even use the word aggressive mentality in order to move forward and create companies and then push them to grow. So this is, in general, from my experience, how I would describe all the ingredients necessary in the ecosystem. And then these relationships become symbiotic, and they help each other. So good universities help entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs make money, and then contribute to the universities. And that's how this whole ecosystem continues. And one success leads to another, and then it builds a complete ecosystem in a given place to do that. And there are two places that I wanted to describe to you. One is Silicon Valley, and the other one is Israel. And then talk a little bit about Okinawa, my little maybe thoughts in that area. So Silicon Valley entrepreneurship, this is sort of the icon for the world. And maybe the unique thing, the most unique thing about Silicon Valley is the ability to attract and retain the best people of the world. It's like a big magnet that brings people from all over the world. And you'll see in companies I was involved, usually Americans are general managers and marketing. Chinese are very good at process development. Indians are very good at software. But it's just bringing the best people in the world and building an economy there based on that. So, and the attracting of these people is really compatible with the history of the U.S. of an immigration and so on. How did it start in Silicon Valley? It was an idea of a Professor Terman of Stanford University, who was the dean of the engineering school. And in 1939, beginning of the 40s, he recommended to Bill Hewitt and David Packard to start a company based on some of the work that they've done at Stanford. And this is how the company Hewlett-Packard, or HP, started in that time frame to do that. Since then, there were several generations of successes that built Silicon Valley to what it is today. The expertise is so-called high-tech and life sciences that includes biotech. But now there's a great deal of focus there on clean tech, alternative energy, and sustainability in general. So this was an example that started maybe 60, 70 years ago in Silicon Valley. There's more recent one that is a great success story, and this is in Israel. So first, one needs to understand that Israeli culture is very innovative and very driven, almost aggressive, I would say. We joke that Israelis are seldom right, never in doubt. Seldom right, never in doubt. But that's what people need in order to start companies. They believe in their ideas, and then they mortgage their house in order to start a company because they believe they have the best idea in the world. There are very good universities in Israel. There were defense requirements in Israel that developed the high-tech industry within the defense industries. And the U.S. provided access to market because the market in Israel is very small. There's a foundation called the Bird Foundation, Binational Research and Development Foundation, that gave money to Israeli companies and to an Israeli company and U.S. company that wanted to work together. So it had to be companies from both countries that wanted to work together, and they got a loan that they had to return from profits. So this foundation is self-sustaining because they have enough success stories that continues to bring money to this. So that provided, and that was very important in the development of the Israeli R&D cluster. So the Israeli R&D cluster really started with the fall of the Berlin Wall, where the worldwide defense industry went into recession, and there were many good engineers in high-tech that became available. And then the Israeli government encouraged entrepreneurship because they gave VC firm, venture capital firm, matching funds. If you raise $50 million, we will give you $50 million, and then you can start making investment in companies. They also started state incubators, where people with an idea got $100,000 in order to demonstrate their ideas. And there's question as to whether that was successful or not. But clearly, the fact that the defense industry has gone down, many good engineers, innovative, aggressive engineers became available, and money became available. That's what developed the R&D cluster in Israel. It also was the late 80s, and the internet started at the time. So the internet really helped the Israeli companies be successful. And then the dot-com boom really drove the growth of the R&D cluster in Israel. But when it collapsed, when the bubble burst, the industry sustained in Israel continued. And today, the government in Israel is trying to do the similar model to pharma, to drug development, and we'll see if that would be successful. But that's the sort of the Israeli entrepreneurship. And I'd like to finish with a slide that is just summarizes a little bit of my own thoughts. So if Okinawa needs entrepreneurship, which are the models that will be applicable? And I really think that none of them will be applicable to Okinawa, that Okinawa must develop its own brand. And you can go through all the things that I showed in both of these places and see how much of it is applicable to Japan. So what could be things that develop here in Okinawa? First, I think OIST should play a very important role. So it'd be based on academic excellence. I mean, we saw the presentation from Singapore about bringing companies in and so on. I think the model here could be on academic excellence that will little by little will develop the area here into an R&D cluster. It needs to be, from a focus point of view, the Institute needs to look at the number of areas, but eventually funnel it down to one or two things where they can be the best in the world. And that these things need to leverage the strengths of this place. I don't know, ocean, you need to look forward to what areas are going to be important 10, 20 years from now, maybe sustainability and so on, and not try to catch up with other areas that started 50, 100 years earlier. And I think that it's relatively easy to attract the best scientists in the world if you do something where Okinawa has a unique advantage in. And as Julie suggested, it could be permanent, could be rotation. Rotation could be very attractive to many people. And then the R&D cluster itself, in my opinion, needs to leverage the Japanese strength. The Japanese economy, second in the world, third in the world, doesn't matter, very strong economy. And that needs to be, it needs to be leveraged here. And one of the things that one can do is bring corporate Japan to do R&D centers here around the universities, R&D centers in the areas that the university is going to be very strong at. And the American-style entrepreneurship, I believe, will develop in due course. Okay, so that summarizes my thought. Sorry if it was too long.
サさんありがとうございました。それでは今のお話非常に示唆に富んでたと思います。特に、独自性を追求しろというのは非常にいいサジェッションだったんじゃないかというふうに思っています。で、私も実はイスラエル2ヶ月前取材に行っておりまして、非常にアントレプレナーシップの国でありました。で、アメリカも移民の国、イスラエルも実は移民の国です。ところがずっと沖縄は皆さん楽しく暮らしていた国で、ここにアントレプレナーシップをどう育むかというのは私たちの次のチャレンジ。これは多分、皆さんから出るんじゃなくて海外から来ていただいて私たちは学ぶ必要があるんではないかというふうに思っています。